Hi everybody, my name is Melissa, and if you followed stitching blogs for a while, you may know me as Measi, or you may know me as that weird woman who runs the apocalypse every year, or you might know me as the person who runs the Teresa Wensler Stitch Along. I live in Providence, Rhode Island. I've been stitching for 33 years now, since I was 11. And I am trying my very first FlossTube today. I've been thinking about doing this for a while and been kind of intimidated by it. But a few of my friends are like, try it, you'll like it, trust me, it gets easier. So pardon me for being a little awkward this first time around. Hopefully it'll get smoother. And here we go. For those of you who are watching this, who are my friends and family who aren't cross stitchers, FlossTube is a collection of a whole ton of cross stitchers across the globe who share videos about what they're working on, tips and techniques, just following along as they're stitching, all sorts of different things related to the hobby. And every May, there's a community called Maynia that has a challenge to push yourself beyond your comfort zone with your stitching. It started a few years ago where you tried to do 15 starts in the first 15 days of May. And from there, as many of these stitch-alongs do, it kind of evolved into a whole ton of different things as people grabbed the idea, made it their own, did the whole I'm stitching in spirit. And then it, they evolve. So there's a lot of people now that don't do brand new starts. They may just work on things they have. They may try to do a certain number of stitches every day. They may just try a new type of stitching that they've never tried before. It really has become up to interpretation. The whole goal is to push yourself and try to do something that you don't normally do, or just something new. So last year, and I did a works in progress mania, a whip mania, where a couple of days before May started, I told my friends on Facebook, pick a number between 1 and I think last year was 50. And that represented every single piece that I had in an Excel chart of things that I had started. And a lot of people responded, more people than I thought would respond. And it was fun because they were picking what I was going to work on for May. It wound up last year that the in-joke became that it was the Teresa Wensler mania, because I think all but one of my Wenslers that's in progress got picked. So this year I decided, all right, I don't want to work on 7 Teresa Wensler projects in May. That's just a little too much Wensler for me. Especially when they're kind of all in the same color scheme. It's like, enough. So I did the same thing last night and said, all right, pick a number this year between 1 and 60. Because I knew that there's a few pieces I probably had forgotten on my whip list this year. And so I could fill those in if I needed to. No one went up that high, surprisingly. Anyway, so I put the caveat that I'm only going to work on 2 Wenslers at most in May. Only 2. There's plenty of them, but if I got more than 2 on that list, I was personally going to swap things out on them. To my surprise, only 1 additional Wensler got picked. So it was very easy to switch things out. And that is the first piece that I'll show you is going to come up. I also decided that I was only going to pick 20 pieces this year for the 2020, but there's a few of these pieces that more than one person picked the same number. So those ones will come up multiple times in May. I also wanted to be realistic because I am now at the end of week 7, working from home full time. My son is here with me because his school is now officially closed through the end of the year. He's doing distance learning. I am home until the end of June, at least. And, I'm working full time. I'm doing school with him and he doesn't get out of school till mid-June. So I don't have as much time during the day as some people do to stitch. There's a lot of days that by the end of the day, I'm exhausted. I'm probably only going to throw in a little bit of stitching in. So I'm realistic. Not all of this stuff is going to get a tremendous amount of progress on it. That's okay. And that's, you know, it's going to go the way it's going to go. So, yeah. So let me show you what I've got going for May. And when I'm done with this video, I'm also going to supply a link to my blog. I'll show pictures of each of these pieces there. I'll list like the first name of the person who picked this piece in case they're insanely curious who put me with what piece. I don't have a specific order that I'm going to work these in. I decided I'm just going to kind of pick names from a hat, and that's what I'm going to work on that day. Because if I set myself up with a specific piece, this is all going to fall apart, guaranteed. Yeah, I will say before I show you the pieces I'm doing that some of these pieces I haven't worked on in a long time. And there's at least one piece in here that I've actually never put stitches in, because it's actually two pieces, I think, that I've never put any stitches in because they're pieces that I adopted from other stitchers. So I'm kind of excited to see where this takes me. It's a very wide variety of styles of pieces, so this is going to be fun. All right, so starting off, and this is the piece I am going to work on today, is the Linens and Threads Sampler. That's a stitch along this year. It's a free stitch along from a great husband and wife team in Australia. And they have put together amazing projects every year for the past 4 years, because this is the fourth. They're free, they're on their website, and they're very detailed pieces, and it's astounding what they're putting together for essentially a free stitch along for people. This year it is a Quaker sampler for friends and family. So there will be people's initials scattered out throughout this. Everyone can interpret the colors as they choose. I decided to go in kind of muted jewel tones for mine. So this is, I'm still on January, by the way, but they've released through May now. So this is the beginning of mine, and all of the colors are on here that I've chosen so far. I may throw in a light lavender that matches the purple here later, but I haven't decided that yet. I may just stick with what I've got. I'm stitching this on 46 count fabric over 2, and I really am happy with this so far. It's just because it's so small, it's kind of a slow go for me, but you'll also learn that I'm a slow stitcher. I'm a really slow stitcher. So yeah, so this is the Linens and Threads Sampler. And I will hopefully get done with that medallion I'm working on tonight. Next on the list is a piece I took as a class a couple of years ago at Celebrations of Needlework in Nashua. This is a Jeanette Douglas design called Love to Stitch. This is what it will look like when it's done. And I have the box for it because she gave us a full kit at the class. And the class was about 3 hours that morning, and I got done barely anything because we were having a lot of fun just chatting. So I have the top of an acorn done, and that's it. So I'm kind of hoping that's this acorn here, and I'm hoping that I can maybe push this column down or maybe this across. And we'll see how much of this I can get done. But I am really excited to work on this again. I had held off stitching on this because last year I finished another one of her projects called 4 Seasons of Mystic that I'd taken with her at a class at Stitcher's Hideaway many years ago. And after running into my Wentzler rut that I kept getting more and more and more and more of them, I decided I'm only working on one piece by a designer at a time because I just get myself into a glut. So I'm glad that this one now can come up. Yeah, so that's that one. The next one is an out of print sampler from Witch's Stitches. And this is called the Astrology Sampler. And this was printed back in like, well, do I have a date on this? 1998. These guys are long gone, and they were one of the few pagan cross-stitch groups around for a long, long time. So I had had this pattern forever. I started it a few years ago, and because it's on black, it also is very slow going. So, but I am getting pretty far along on this. I'm stitching it on 14 count black Aida, and it's got a ton of cat hair on it, pardon me. Yeah, so my goal is to continue working on that bottom sun that will mirror the one that's on the top. And that's probably all I'll get done on it while I'm working on it. But if I can continue, then I'll work on the 2 moons that are down in the bottom corners as well. Okay, next, I don't have a final picture on this one, but this was also a freebie stitch along online. I did not start this when the original stitch along happened. I came across this piece a lot later, but this is Book of Ink Circles by Ink Circles. And I started this several years ago and then discovered I had horrific miscounts on it. So I spent a lot of time picking out stuff. And so that's where I am on the border. My plan is I want to get the border in first, and then I'll start working each of the squares. And I have been waffling on the colors I'm going to use on this thing for a long time. But I think I finally figured out that I'm going to be doing kind of a sea jewel tony thing. I found a color scheme from Rosewood Manor for one of her sea pieces that I absolutely loved, and I picked up the floss pack. So I probably am going to play with that once I get all of these, the background in there. So that's that one. The next one I have not worked on forever, and I don't know, honestly, when I last worked on this. This is from Dragon Dreams, and it is a group of 5 little dragons called the Elemental Dragons. And in 2005, I finished this one, and that's Fire. And then it took me all the way until 2010 to finish Spirit. And now I barely have Earth done 10 years later. So, and I have the fabric for the other 2. So this will be a fun one to work on since it has not seen the light of day probably for 10 years. So that's next on the list. That's a quick stitch. I honestly don't know why I haven't brought it out, but probably because I've been so focused on other stuff like having a child. All right, so let's see. Next I have, excuse me, Mirabilia's Midnight Summer's Fairy. I adopted this from another stitcher. So most of the stitching that's done on this is not my work, it's her work, but I have put some stitches in on it. And this is on the called for linen. So her dress is mostly in, and I just need to continue working kind of around this way to get this part of her dress in and then work north. So that is that one. It's a absolutely stunning piece in person. But as I said, most of the work on that one is not mine to date. That is where it was when it was adopted. The next piece I have was my New Year's Day start this year, and that is the Early American series from Little House Needleworks. I don't have a full thing of the 9 patch, but this is square number 1. I do have all of the squares, but this is the only one that I've started working the inside of the square. So my part is it's on 40 count fabric. I think I can, yeah, you can see that. 40 count fabric. And I got a little bit of the Betsy Ross square that you saw here. I've also been working on getting the rest of the outlines. I have way too much fabric here, but I wasn't sure how much I would need. I'm honestly kind of surprised on 40 count fabric how big these squares are. I thought it would be a lot smaller, and I don't know why. But yeah, so this is my New Year's start. I've been rotating this a lot with some other pieces, so it hasn't moved too far, but it's getting there. Yeah, I've got almost half the squares in there. So that is that one. The next one, I don't know where my cover chart is of this, but I do have the pattern. This is Hugs and Kisses from Blue Ribbon Design, one of my favorite designers because they're nice and relaxed to do. A lot of fun, a lot of color. This is on 28 count, and the called for colors are in over dyes, but I'm doing this in straight DMC. So that one will be a nice relaxing one to do. I'll probably pick that on a night that I've had a busy night. Okay, the next one on the list is Down the Danube from Jeanette Douglas. And this one has a bit of a story. Jeanette taught this on a winter market cruise down the Danube River. I want to say about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And my friends Becky and Sandy went on this cruise. And about a year later, Sandy passed away unexpectedly. And she was part of our stitching crew. And we went through and we got all of her cross-stitch stuff together. And, you know, people were taking what they wanted to work on and what they wanted to finish, whatnot. And because I'm a Jeanette Douglas fan, and really the only person there that otherwise that would have done the piece was Becky, who already had a copy of this, I took this piece. And so this is one of the two I have in my stash that Sandy didn't finish. And will eventually have both of our names initialed on there. So this is the pattern. And I do not know if this was ever released otherwise. I think it was specifically for this cruise. So that's the piece. Sandy did not get much done on this. I mean, like literally only got that done. So, but I will still, of course, be putting her initials on it because this is one of her final pieces. And just like I did years ago with another piece that Eric's mom started, it's one of those testaments to your stitchers and your friends and the connection between people. So that one is on, I want to say 32 count linen. I'm not quite sure, but I'll check the pattern later. The next one that I have is a Lavender and Lace, the Arms of an Angel. And this is one of the ones I have never stitched on. And so this is the picture. And this is the piece. And it's on 32 count. So I have no idea what I'm going to do yet on this one. This is a piece I adopted from the same person I adopted that Mirabilia from. So yeah, I'll obviously be working on the dress because that's where everything is in progress. Be interested to see where I go with that one because I've never tackled it before. The next one I have is the first of the Wenslers. And it's one that I have not worked on in quite some time. This is Fantasy Triptych. I have the outside border is done. I have the person to do on this side. The castle goes here, and there's another person that goes over here. I stopped working on this because I realized that the background was all supposed to be in half stitch and I was whole stitching it, and I got annoyed and I threw it across the room, as you do when you're annoyed at your stitching. And then I realized, you know what, I don't really have to pick this out. I can just not backstitch if there's any backstitching in it, and it'll still kind of fade into the background. So that's where I am with that one. And I think I'm probably going to work a little more on the castle part when I get to that. That is on 28 count even weave. As you can see, I bounce all over with fabric. I am not one of those, oh, I only stitch on this. I stitch on everything. Whatever works for the pattern is what I stitch on. Which brings me to the insanity piece. This is And They Sinned. If you have not heard my story of And They Sinned, it will come up in another FlossTube because it's too long to do here. But yes, I'm working on the And They Sinned. I started this last year for New Year's. And I started my copy as a joke on 56 count fabric over 2. This feels like a bed sheet. It literally feels like a bed sheet. And when it's done, if you are familiar with And They Sinned, it's like 5 feet tall on the called for fabric. My entire piece is only going to be, with the allowance on each side, 28 inches. It's going to be the cheapest copy of And They Sinned you've ever seen framed. And if I do get it done, it's going to be amazing. But yes, this is 56 count even weave. It is honestly not bad to stitch on. The first couple of things are difficult, but then once you get a few stitches in, it works wonderfully. Your eyes need to lock onto that hole. But I am able to stitch on it with no magnification, without my glasses on, just fine. So you just need good light. The next piece is the other Teresa Wentzler piece I have for this year, and it's Millennium, which I have a surprising amount done on. And this is one of those pieces I've avoided because I was so focused on getting Floral Bell Pull done last year, and for the past umpteen years, that was my focus. So Millennium, I've got one angel in. The other angel, obviously, on the other side will look pretty much identical to that one. The planets that are in the center are over 1. I may start focusing on a little bit of that, because if I'd been working on And They Sinned, my eyes should work pretty well on over 1 for a little while. So yeah, so that's where that is. I will eventually be changing the text down at the bottom because we're 20 years into the Millennium. It doesn't really apply anymore, but it is a gorgeous piece. So that's that one. The next one was my New Year's Day start a few years ago. This is, I think it's out of print now, but this is Wild Heart Designs, and the photo is really bad. But this is an alphabet sampler, and the line between every single one of these letters is a different specialty stitch. I have seen several of my friends stitch this thing. Everybody has done different colors, different sized fabric, and it comes out amazing every single time. And every single one is just a little bit different and yet the same. My copy is on 27 count banding that I picked up at Needleworker's Delight a few years ago. I'm doing this with Nina's Threads. She's out of Hungary, I believe, out of Prague. So I have the first 3 full lines done. I'm working on D, and it goes for a while on banding. The only difficulty working on this is the fact that it's on banding. So I am one of those people that I have scroll rods. They don't like me. I never can get my tension right on them. So I'm always trying to balance this banding in a Q-snap, and that doesn't work great either. But I'm going to see if I can get my scroll rods to behave themselves this time around on that one. I would definitely like to get D done. If I can get E done, even better. The next piece is another freebie stitch along. This is off of Facebook, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this. Dear Rhine. And every year they've done kind of an interesting collection of once a week patterns that are like, the one I have here are circles, and this is from a few years ago. They've done octagons. This year they're doing a really cool woven piece. One of my friends, Becky, is working on it, and I do want to start that one at some point. They do really interesting designs, and they're not complicated, but when you put everything together, it really looks elaborate. So this is my version, and they all start from the bottom right corner, which is also kind of tricky for me since I am a center or a upper left person. I'm working this in DMC, and my piece will eventually be probably like 9 circles across. I'm going to be missing a few of the circles for the year because of the cut of fabric I have, but it's going to work out beautifully no matter what I do. Not sure what I'll get done on it this month, but hopefully I can at least get a couple more of the circles in or fill in some of the centers. The next piece I have is one that I fell in love with when I saw it in her booth. And this is Quaker Compass from Rosewood Manor. If you have never been to a show that has a Rosewood Manor booth, you need to do it sometime. Because half of her patterns, you look at them on the front and you're like, yeah, it's pretty, but they never seem to translate well on the paper. And then when you see the final pieces up in the booth, you're like, oh my God. And you need to get one like immediately. I've fallen victim to this about 10 times now at her booths when I go to celebrations. Like 3 times a year, I'm back in the booth. So my copy of Quaker Compass, I am not doing the called for colors. And the reason I'm not is because they're very similar to the colors that I just did my son's birth sampler in, because I did her to have a childbirth sampler. And it literally is the same colors of greenish blue. So to mix mine up, I decided to do mine in a Threadworks. And so this is where mine is right now. It may not come through well on the screen, but this is a green to lilac-y purple to dark purple mix. I'm working the outside of it in that, and then the inside and the letters may wind up being a little more solid because they're the smaller patterns. And partially because I'm a little worried I didn't buy enough of the Threadworks to do the whole thing in one piece. So, you know, I need to judge where some of this stuff is going to go and do some color management. But that's that piece. I have this working on 32 count linen, and I haven't worked on that probably in about 6 months now, but I pull this out to do a little bit of work all the time. I don't know why I haven't caught on that piece, because I really like it, but maybe again, I was so focused on Floral Bell Pull, it kind of just, and Max's birth sampler kind of getting pushed off. The next piece, I've got 4 more, guys, promise, because I'm doing 20 of them. So the next piece is the Sampler Needleworks I Love New England. This is an out of print piece. I have never seen, other than the model, I've never seen a copy of this finished. This was a small shop in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and I picked this up, I want to say in 2002-ish. The original piece was gorgeous, and it was on 18 count Ada, I think. And it just, you know, nice and crisp, and just, you looked at it and you went, whoa, it's a big piece. I am doing mine on 32 count white, antique white. And this is where I am so far. I got a little bogged down starting that border because it's one long triple stitch here, 3 stitches across of the same color, and it goes all the way down. So once I started breaking it up and doing a little bit of this and a little bit of the words, it started to move a lot faster. This one is a great one for when I need to get into a groove with stitching. Love it. It's probably one of the ones that's going to go on my rapid rotation list, because I really want to get this one on my wall. Really, really, really. But like I said, this is out of print. I have never seen anyone else finish this. So if you find a copy of this, consider yourself extremely lucky. I really wonder how many they ever printed, and the shop is now gone. So even if you look them up online, you'll see this weird website that has no information. Even when they were opened, there was no information. So yeah. The next piece is almost done, and my friend Ivana is going to laugh because this was to be her wedding sampler years and years and years ago. And at this point, The joke is not, I'm going to get it done for her 10th anniversary. Now we're looking at her 20th anniversary. But this is by Cooler Design. It's called Apache Wedding Blessing. The verse on it is, now you will feel no rain, for each of you will be shelter for the other. Now you will feel no cold, for each of you will be warmth for the other. Now there is no more loneliness. Now you are two persons, but there is only one life before you. May your days together be good and long upon the earth. It's a really nice piece. And for someone like me who grew up in the Upper Rockies, you know, with a lot of the Native American culture around there, it kind of, even though I'm not someone who's really into that aesthetic, there's just kind of a connection to it because of where I come from. This piece is actually almost done. It's just a ton of back stitching that I got to get done on it. So I sent this around years ago for a round robin because I was really struggling to go forward on it. But as you can see, I mean, this thing's done. I just need to get it back stitched. And then maybe I could actually get it to Ivana one of these days. But yes, see, Ivana, I can stitch. And I do finish pieces eventually. That's on 28 count linen, and it is the first piece I ever tried on linen, ever. And it's still sitting there. Hopefully to get done this year. It would be glorious to get this one off the list. All right, 2 more pieces. So the second to last piece is the Never Ending Band Sampler. This is a freebie ongoing stitch along by Kitty and Me Designs off of her website. She off and on and not on really a normal schedule, but it kind of goes and then goes away for a bit and then goes and then goes away for a bit as her life dictates. It's a free-for-all, pick your fabric, pick your floss, whatever, band sampler. I started the first few weeks of it and never really got any further on it, but that's where I ended. And so, yeah, I'll try to get another couple of bands on it and see where I end up. I have this on a piece of 28 count. Is this? Yeah, I think it's even weave. Even weave. It's got a mix of a Threadworks color that was kind of spring-like and just some off-white DMC. And just fun to, you know, just kind of throw things on there and see how things look. And then the final piece is a kit that I've had for ages called Cowboy Cats. If you know anything about me, you know that there are cats everywhere in my life. There are currently about, what do we have, 10 cats in this house. Too many cats, but we love them all. So this is Cowboy Cats, and this was a old kit. So everything is on the kitted fabric with kitted floss. It's 14 count, Ada, and being stitched with a variety of like 3 at a time, 2 at a time, all that fun jazz that some of these kits are in. And we'll see if I can get a little further on that center cat and get it moving. This has come up a few times during my Stitch Mania, so, and it never seems to pick up, but it's one of those pieces that I'm not fully devoted to, but I still think is cute, and so yeah, I'll finish it at some point. So that is my pile of Stitch Mania projects. I'm in trouble, aren't I? No, it'll be a lot of fun. And so I will try to do some updates about once a week on what I've been doing. And hopefully I will be doing several more floss tubes over the next weeks and months and see how this goes. So I'll wrap up here for now. If you have any questions for me or you want to mention anything, feel free to send me an email. My email address is measiwitch@gmail.com, or you can go to my website. I'll provide a link at the bottom. Send me a comment there. You can also find my email there. If you know me on Facebook, say hi to me there. And yeah, happy stitching everybody in May. Have a great time, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye.